I just want to know how Magic the Gathering came to be the worldwide phenomenon it is today. So I want to talk about Richard Garfield. I want to talk about how Richard Garfield conjured up the first trading card game. I want to talk about that drama that shook the fandom to the core. I want to talk about the allegations. I don't think there are any, but if there is, we're going to find out.
They shuffle like ordinary cards, but if you've never played Magic the Gathering, then the deck is definitely stacked against you.
Recently, I did play my first game of Commander. I had a unicorn, he had elves, and the elves just mauled me, destroyed me. Also, he was 8 years old, but it got me thinking, who made Magic? Our story begins in the late 1980s with a man named Richard Garfield. Now, Richard Garfield, he was a gamer. But he wasn't just playing games, he was tinkering and designing his own. In fact, in 1991, he was shopping around a board game called Robo Rally. You ever play Robo Rally? No, you didn't. Shut up. He pitched Robo Rally to a fledgling gaming company called Wizards of the Coast. Wizards of the Coast was run by another gamer, Peter Adkison. See, Wizards of the Coast was a tiny outfit back then, and Adkison told Garfield, cool game, but we need something smaller and quicker to play, especially for crowded conventions. Essentially, a portable game people could play in between big RPG sessions or while waiting in line at Gen Con. Little did they know this request would spark a revolution in gaming. Garfield went back at the drawing board and had his big moment while literally contemplating a waterfall in Oregon. He imagined a card game that was unlike any before. A game modular and expandable, where players wouldn't all have identical decks. Each card would be a tiny piece of game that you could collect and trade. As Garfield later explained to Adkison, imagine a card game where there are hundreds of cards with more being made all the time. Some cards are rare, some are common. You build a deck with whatever cards you want. You have no idea what your opponent's deck is. And then you duel. This concept blew Adkison's mind. They had the blueprint for what would become Magic the Gathering. Garfield got to work prototyping the game right away. By 1992, he had a team of playtesters who were buddies of his and classmates. He even had a chemistry department staffer named Bill Rose, who later became a major Magic designer. They had a rough set of about 150 cards printed on paper. The game at the time was simply just called Magic. No, they had to change it to Magic the Gathering later because you couldn't trademark just Magic. I actually tried to trademark Epic Meal. They didn't let me. It's 2 words. Had to be Epic Meal time. Anyways, it's not about. Anyways. Wizards of the Coast resources were tight, but they knew they had something special. They planned to debut Magic at Gen Con 1993, the biggest tabletop gaming convention in the USA. Summer 1993, Peter Adkison went to a smaller convention with a few sample cards to drum up interest. He ended up demoing the game to a succession of distributors. That's when he came across this one guy in a cowboy hat and was pitching him the game. And that dude in the cowboy hat was like, let me get my boss. And he got this other guy, and that other guy had a bigger cowboy hat. And he saw the breakdown of the game and he was like, this is crazy. Let me get my boss. And he got a guy who had a bigger cowboy hat. And he knows good stuff when he sees it. He saw it and he was like, I'm all in. Let me go get my boss. And he got a guy with an even bigger cowboy hat. Seriously. No, I'm serious. Right then and there, the Cowboys, boom, $40,000 pre-order. Enough to run the first print of Magic the Gathering. In August 1993, Magic the Gathering officially debuted at Gen Con in Milwaukee. And right from the jump, it was a disaster. Wizards of the Coast had shipped pallets of cards to the convention, but the shipment didn't arrive. Not on day one, at least. But this built up hype. There was crowds gathering around. There's no cards to purchase. It's not there. They got no product. Big whoops. When the cards finally showed up on day 2, people were crazy. They were helping them unload the boxes of cards. They're helping them unload them and buying them right there. They all wanted to play the game. Like, the game's new, so they want to see, like, how do you even play the game? How does it work? Just cards? What is this, poker? I hardly know her. Richard Garfield, seeing the public play his game for the first time, was stunned at the convention hall. Suddenly, you got little groups of people, little nerds on the floor. You know, you ever go to conventions? I go to conventions. I love them. I love the nerds. I love everyone. The conventions you get, that's like the nerdiest crew. They're on the floor there, you know? Now they got the DSs, but back then it's Magic. You didn't have the DS, dude. Did you have a Game Boy? Shut up. Every single card Wizards of the Coast brought to Gen Con sold out. We're talking 2.5 million cards gone in days. Magic, an instant hit. Richard Garfield later admitted, humble guy. Richard Garfield, so humble. He later admitted that he was caught off guard by this. He said he designed Magic the Gathering for hardcore gamers like himself. He didn't imagine kids who are going to Toys R Us were looking for Magic cards. But in fact, within a year, Magic cards were on the shelves of Toys R Us, right between Barbies and Hot Wheels. Richard Garfield out here making big moves. Magic the Gathering. Yeah, there's a gathering at the cash register of people who are buying Magic the Gathering. After Gen Con 1993, Magic the Gathering spread like wildfire. First edition of the cards, now known as Alpha Set, sold out completely. Wizards of the Coast quickly printed a beta run, which also sold out, and the Unlimited edition. By 1993, all of these sets sold out, and Magic the Gathering had made $2 million. Wizards of the Coast hurried to start hiring more staff. They hired Garfield's playtest friends there. This tiny company grew rapidly, riding the wave of the new collectible card game craze. It had started. It started that. You wouldn't even know Yu-Gi-Oh! Without Magic. Okay.
Do you know why we have the binder open to this page with these 9 particular cards?
No, I don't.
To give you a sense of how crazy this collectible aspect to the card game was, there was this card, Black Lotus, and it was one of the strongest from the 1993 set. That card was trading for $50 for a piece of cardboard. But I don't even want to tell you what Black Lotus would go for today. Today, a Black Lotus? Google it.
The Black Lotus, which is like the creme de la creme, that's the card everybody wants, is $15,000 to $20,000 in its current condition.
People were desperate for cards, so they're like driving hours to go pick them up. It was like a treasure hunt. It was a game. It was like Pokemon. Through 1994 and 1995, Magic exploded globally. Wizards of the Coast started adding expansion after expansion, like Arabian Nights or Ice Age, Legends, and more. And these changed the mechanics of the game, and people ate that up. Magic also quickly developed like an organized play scene. They had stores running tournaments. And in 1994, the first Magic World Championship was held at Gen Con. By 1996, Wizard launched the first official Pro Tour, a series of high-stakes tournaments with cash prizes, which was like a crazy idea. Professional Magic the Gathering players playing for tens of thousands of dollars. Of course, it's not all smooth sailing, right? There's a lot of success here in these early days, so there comes a lot of growing pains as well. One big issue was that some of the early cards became too sought after and expensive. This made newer or poorer players feel left out. Remember, Magic the Gathering was like the first of its kind. Wizards was figuring things out as they went along. 1994, 1995, they tried reprinting some popular cards in a set called Chronicles, like some sort of greatest hits type thing, right? They want to make it more accessible, right? No. People were out there paying high prices for rare cards. Then they get that card. Now you re-release that card. I just bought this card from this guy for a lot of money, and now I could have just bought a bunch of packs. Come on. So in response, Wizards of the Coast get this genius idea. They make the reserved list. Yo, the reserved list. Someone like myself, I don't know Magic the Gathering. I don't know about the things, but like this is what I'm talking about, dude. What's the reserved list? Well, I know about the reserved list. I'm going to tell you about that in a second. Magic the Gathering experienced some mishaps with the rules and balance. For example, early Magic included cards that forced players to do weird-ass things like One infamous card, the Chaos Orb, required you to physically drop the card onto the table and see where it landed. Not exactly tournament friendly, right? Like, can you imagine? Just close your eyes and imagine someone at a Magic the Gathering. Like, is that guy gonna be slick at like standing up with a card and slamming it down on the other card? Like, can you imagine what that would look like? Yeah, that card got banned. Another card from 1994, Charizard. I don't know if I said that right. It made players pause the game and start another game of Magic to decide that outcome. So it was like Inception. You started to play Magic within Magic, which is really cool. Except then like a game that's supposed to be an hour could just end up taking so much longer. Banned. These early quirks and mishaps became part of Magic's charm. You know, like this balance aspect and finding the limits in hilarious ways. At the time, culturally, Magic got hit with some of that satanic panic, you know, because they had pentagrams and stuff on it, and D&D was getting a lot of that devil stuff.
Since these games are so violence-oriented, you do not just play at the game, you become the game.
Wizards of the Coast responded and toned down the imagery, but like, you know how it is when you're 13 years old and your parents are like, oh, you can't get involved with that. There's the devil. That's the devil. You know, you hear that when you're 15, you're like, well, I guess it's demon time. By 1995-96, Wizards of the Coast is riding high. Magic the Gathering is killing it, making over $100 million a year. Wizards of the Coast used their newfound riches to acquire TSR in 1997, the makers of Dungeons & Dragons, essentially saving Dungeons & Dragons from financial ruin. Magic the Gathering's like a big-time player in the industry now. In 1999, the success of Magic and Pokemon, which Wizards of the Coast was briefly involved in distribution of, by the way, they had attracted the attention of the biggest toy company around, Hasbro. Hasbro bought Wizards of the Coast for about $325 million. Not even 10 years before that, it's just a company in a garage. Hasbro buying Wizards of the Coast would have big implications down the line, but initially, Magic's new stewards wanted nothing but the best. They wanted their golden goose to keep laying golden eggs. The late 90s saw whole new playing card games jump on the scene. What up, Pokemon? What up, Yu-Gi-Oh? And Magic faced serious competition for players' attention. For a brief period around 99-2001, Magic's growth cooled off a bit. Mark Rosewater, Magic designer, also known as Maro, he said, mistakes are a crucial part of the creative process. Success may bring you acclaim, but mistakes bring you knowledge. Got serious guys out here at Magic the Gathering. Magic's team learned and adapted, keeping the game alive through the slump. By the early 2000s, Magic was gearing up for a renaissance. They introduced exciting new worlds and mechanics. The steampunk-esque Mirrodin block in 2003 gave cool artifact themes and some broken cards as well. Skull Clamp, which got banned. The Invasion Odyssey blocks around 2000 to 2002 rekindled interest with epic storylines, and Magic's card frame got a facelift in 2003, the 8th edition, which was the first major visual change to the card since they started. People were pissed, dude. They were pissed. It turns out gamers of all kinds, no matter what type of gamer you are, you don't like when they change up your stuff. You like your stuff how it is. You don't change that. One of the biggest innovations in Magic's history came in 2002, Magic the Gathering Online, taking it to the computers, baby. Yeah, long before Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering Arena, there was MTG Online. That's what they called it on the streets. I don't know. I'm talking to those guys on the streets. Today, by today's standards, it's trash, bro. Come on. Look at it. It's trash. But back then, it allowed players to draft your decks and battle over the internet, which is at the time next level. It also opened up a new revenue stream as players bought digital cards. Magic Online proved that the game could thrive in the digital realm, though it mostly appealed to the hardcore gamers. Casual players stepped up like 2018. That's when I first experienced Magic, actually. This constant evolution and updates kept it fresh, kept people involved in Magic. That's why we're still hearing about Magic right now. That's why I'm talking about it right now. In 2006, 2007, Magic the Gathering introduced a whole new card type, a Planeswalker card. And that's crazy because you, the player in Magic, are a Planeswalker, like a mage that can travel between worlds. And so that's why this sounds crazy. For someone like me that doesn't play Magic, this sounds like kind of breaking a card that breaks the wall a bit or makes you apart. I don't know, but it's cool. That's risky to do, to add this new card that changes the balance of the game. Like, that's a crazy move to just pull up. At first, people were confused about it. They're like, wait, I get this whole new card to help me? But quickly, fans ate that up. Yeah, it turns out they loved it. Planeswalkers quickly became a fan favorite and staple of Magic's design. Risky move that paid off. I mean, look at it. Look at it. They look sick. They look sick. Look at it. That's a nice looking card right there. Come on. You like that? That's a good card. Look at this card. On the business side, in the 2000s, Wizards of the Coast, now under Hasbro's ownership, is out there making big business moves. You know, they're being praised, they're being panned. Either way, they're making moves. They're trailblazing. One success story was the embrace of fan-created formats. Like, they bought in on user mods. In the mid-2000s, players invented a casual format called Elder Dragon Highlander, later renamed Commander. And remember I told you I played Magic not too long ago? That's what I played. I played Commander. That's how they got me. Commander was a multiplayer format with 100 deck card, and you have one card that's your commander. I had a unicorn. I got smoked by an 8-year-old who had elves. Commander started in the grassroots, but became very popular with players. Wizards of the Coast saw that, so they made moves. They made the Commander pre-constructed deck in 2011, and people ate it up. This was a smart business decision by Wizards of the Coast. They said, if you can't beat him, join him and maybe sell it to him. On the other hand, one persistent headache for Wizards of the Coast was that reserve list. Talk to me about that. Yeah, talk to me about that reserve list, dude. The reserve list was the promise to not reprint certain old cards for the people that were collecting. Like, how could you collect if you know that any time they could re-release, and now that's not, So they made the promise. They made, they wouldn't reprint these cards. But by the 2000s, it became evident that the reserve list was preventing reprints of super valuable cards that newer players needed if they wanted to take their skills to the next level. If they wanted to play older competitive formats like Legacy or Vintage, most players who aren't collectors, they started hating on the reserve list, right? And I see it. I can see it from both sides. I see like someone who put a lot of money in and they got their special card. They don't want it to be devalued, but someone's like, I want that card because I want to play. And I'm gate kept. Even Mark Rosewater, Maro, he's not about the reserve list. He's like, I'm not about it. I don't like it. Okay, Mark, why don't you change it then? And I got to respect this. He was like, listen, there are many things that don't go the way I would have done it if it were my call, but that doesn't mean I don't execute on the decision. If we're going to have a reserve list, we're going to do it correctly, which includes not undermining it by breaking the spirit of it. Mark Rosewater, a man of his word and a man of other people's words also. So those super rare cards like the Power 9 remain rare. You can't get them unless you got a time machine, which you can use to go back to 1993 and start opening up packs, which would be such a terrible way to use a time machine. If I knew you did that, I'd beat you up. Hearing all this talk about the reserve list has got me wanting to bring up the reserve list the next time I'm around people that love Magic the Gathering. I want to hear some healthy debate and discussion about the reserve list. By the end of the 2000s, Magic the Gathering has fully regained momentum. Sets like Shards of Alara and Zendikar. I don't know if I'm saying these right, by the way. These were very well received. In fact, Zendikar introduced hidden treasure cards, actual vintage cards inserted randomly in packs. It's a great idea, right? Like, how'd you do that? You get an old card, you put like this. Wizards' clever mix of nostalgia and innovation was working. These guys know what to do. They're making moves out here. If the 2000s set the stage, the 2010s were the takeoff. Magic's popularity skyrocketing around 2012 to 2016. Might surprise you, but by some estimates, the number of active Magic players doubled during this period. Hasbro started reporting Magic as one of its top moneymaker brands, up there with Monopoly and Nerf. What was driving this boom? A mix of things: amazing set design, blocks, a gothic horror themed block in 2011. Just a legendary fan favorite, better marketing. Wizards realized they needed to hook the video game generation, so they launched things like Duels of the Planeswalker, a console PC game, taught Magic basics, and ramped up content on YouTube and Twitch. Magic also benefited from the general rise of geek culture. Suddenly seeing people playing Magic at your local pub or on college quads wasn't unusual. In fact, it was pretty chill. Even celebrities like Post Malone is out here loving Magic all up and down. You see how much Post Malone loves Magic? I'm sure that brought in some curious new fans. They saw Post Malone all up in Magic and they were like, Wizards cards? That's probably exactly how it went. In 2018, Wizards made a huge push into esports and digital with Magic the Gathering Arena, a modern free-to-play digital version of the game. Arena was sleek. I experienced it. That's how I experienced Magic the very first time. I popped it open. I actually played Hearthstone, and I was like, I think I know how to play Magic. So I went over to Magic, and I saw them like, they must have something. That's how I came to Magic the Gathering Arena. Shout out to my boy Taylor.
And like, you would think it was a meme that these guys smell bad.
And it was a hit. Millions of people downloaded it. This became a key way for new players to be introduced to the game. Wizards even launched a new competitive series with Arena, including a lavishly funded Magic Pro League in 2019. They got Magic, like imagine being like an esports gamer. You're a Magic the Gathering pro gamer, esports gamer. It's a crazy job to have in 2019. These top players got contracts to play Magic as a job, and it looked like Magic was about to make a dent in the esports arena. They didn't, though. Yeah, unfortunately, the MPL experiment was a bit of a blunder. It only lasted 2 seasons. And I've experienced this trying to watch Magic online. When you don't know the game and you watch it online, it's really very hard to keep track of what's going on there. They wanted Magic the Gathering to be like League of Legends or Fortnite. And Magic the Gathering isn't Fortnite. Remember that. Remember I said that. Magic the Gathering isn't Fortnite. Wizards of the Coast shifted back to old school tournaments, traditional tournament system. And Arena itself today remains very popular, and it's a cornerstone of Magic's potential in the future. It showed this paper card game can thrive in digital form. Something Richard Garfield, my man, called way back. Yeah, he actually predicted that from the start. Richard Garfield's original patent for the trading card game, the concept foresaw the idea of cards as game pieces that could exist physically or digitally. My man Richard Garfield essentially inventing the idea of DLC and microtransactions before they were a thing. Richard Garfield. Now, as Magic grew in the 2010s, Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro started experimenting with new product types and crossovers, some which people ate up, very successful, and others that were quite hated on. On the successful side, Magic released Modern Masters in 2013, which was the first of many special reprint sets aimed at giving newer players access to older cards for formats like Modern. And it was a smash hit. Players were delighted to buy nostalgia at a premium. That's win-win for Hasbro, Wizards, and for the fans of Magic. Wizards also started the Secret Lair series in 2019. These are small direct-to-consumer drops of reprinted cards with wild new art or themes. Mostly they're neat and harmless. Essentially they're like reskins of cards that already exist. So maybe you found these cards in a pack, and now here you could have this new version of it, but it's just a different art style, like a skin, cosmetic. It was a cosmetic difference. It was pretty cool. But in 2020, Secret Lair ran into a major controversy when they did a Walking Dead version of this, which were these cosmetic switch-ups for the cards, as I understand it. But they had characters like Daryl and Negan, which were specifically new cards, new characters, which were not reskins of other cards. So if you wanted these cards, there's no actual answer for it in the regular packs. You had to buy this pack. That's like a gaming tactic. That's video game tactics right there. You got to buy the DLC to get the gun. That gun was online. It's part of the loadout that you want to make. You got to buy the thing. If you want that, you don't even like Walking Dead, but the only way you're going to get that gun is if you get that thing. Look what they do to gamers, bro. They do this to all gamers. Doesn't matter what type of gamer you are. And a portion of the fan base just doesn't even like mixing. They want their Magic the Gathering to be Magic the Gathering. Kind of like how, like in gaming, some people want their army soldier guys to be army soldier guys. But then you like introduce Spawn and they're like, what the heck? And you introduce a woman and then they're like, what the heck? Basically, people were bummed because this was paywalling gameplay content. For a bit, it felt like a nerdier version of a cultural war, you know, keep my Magic pure fantasy versus people that are like new cool things, yay. And the crazy thing about this Walking Dead set was it sold. It sold big time. That's right. Listen, gamers, they make a lot of noise with their mouths, but they do a lot of speaking with their wallets more so, and they bought in. Wizards even bragged that it brought in more customers than ever. So when they see that money, they obviously make the decision to commit to that. These dollars are speaking louder than any gamer complaints, trust me. So this marked a turning point for Magic. Magic became Fortnite. Hear me out. No, they did. Magic, they added Street Fighter, they added Lord of the Rings, Warhammer, they added SpongeBob. Magic the Gathering is so Fortnite, they're adding Fortnite. That's why you get Fortnite cards in Magic. Anyways, I think it's cool. I saw those SpongeBob cards. I don't really like SpongeBob, but I was like, I see how that is cool. If you like SpongeBob and Magic, you must be the 8-year-old that beat me in Magic. So into the 2020s, Magic the Gathering is breaking its own sales records year after year. In 2021, Hasbro's CEO gleefully announcing that Magic had its first billion-dollar year. That's crazy. $1 billion. Think about that. A card game invented by a bunch of buddies now making $1 billion in a year. Along with that success, though, came some turbulence. Wizards dramatically increased the number of products released each year. More sets, more special editions, more everything. Players starting to feel product fatigue, you know. They're trying to blast us. Now, you get that $1 billion year. You can't have another $1 billion year. You got to have more than $1 billion next year. The secondary market price for cards climbed on key tournament cards, making competitive play expensive. Magic's community, being passionate, often vocally pushed back on things they disliked. Nothing exemplified this tension better than the notorious Magic 30th Anniversary Edition in 2022. Ah, yes, the $999 for 60 cards incident. You might have heard whispers of this one. So 2023 marked Magic's 30th birthday. To celebrate, Wizards did a lot of cool stuff. Special events, reprints of Vegas convention called Magic 30. But one idea they had went over like a lead balloon. They created 30th Anniversary Edition booster packs. I'm talking about prints of the most famous old cards, like Black Lotus. But in fancy retro frames. Sounds great until they announced the price. $999 for a box of 4 packs with just 15 cards per pack. And those reprinted cards couldn't even be used in tournaments. They were basically collector's items or pretty proxies. Community reaction was swift and overwhelmingly negative. $1,000 for a random pack of proxies. See, proxies are things that are not officially Magic, but like you can get like a card made, maybe for your bar mitzvah, you get a card made of you. That's a great idea. Shout out to my boy D, not a proxy. People felt this was a cash grab that didn't honor the spirit of the game's anniversary. The backlash was so bad, despite the product initially selling out online because of a few ultra collectors. You guys know how it is. The whales came through. And when asked about the pricing, my man Mark Rosewater diplomatically sidestepped the pricing. He was like, Magic can be a very fun game and you could spend very little on it. But you can let players invest as much as they want to invest. In other words, he's like, yeah, we offer $1,000 packs, but you don't have to buy them and they're not going to affect you. Can you please let us rinse these fucking whales? Through all these ups and downs, one thing remained constant and true. The Magic community is the real heart of the game. From the earliest playtesters, Richard Garfield's University Lounge, to the kitchen table casual players getting smoked by that 8-year-old and his gang of elves. In Magic the Gathering is the magic. Richard Garfield himself realized this early on. At the first Gen Con in 1993, when he watched strangers teach each other the game he created, something clicked. The game wasn't just about the cards or winning. It was about human connection. Richard Garfield said, "The games themselves matter less than the act of sitting at a table with someone." If you've never played Magic, maybe now you'll pick up a deck and give it a shot, or maybe download the game and try it out. Up to you. I don't care what you do. I mean, I care about you, and I wish you the best. And if you're watching this and you already play Magic, well, I hope you love playing Magic, dude. I hope you enjoy your cards. I hope you have many wonderful and fun memories playing Magic for the rest of your life. I don't know why I'm saying it in this tone. I can't help it but say to you like that. I hope you like your cards, bro. I hope you enjoy Magic.